Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott. You know him as B. Scott. Well, let's talk some Pacers. We're just a couple of days away from the NBA trade deadline, and we're going to get into the weeds here. We're going to talk about the Pacers. They've already made a move. Are there any moves still left to be made for Indiana? We're going to look back at the Siakam trade, tie a bow on that one, as it's been now a couple of weeks removed from that deal for the Indiana Pacers. We're also going to talk about the Pacers in the playoffs. The playoff picture has the Pacers firmly in there. What are the teams that the Pacers could possibly beat if they were to face off in a playoff series, and then we'll wrap up the conversation as we're a couple of weeks away from the NBA All-Star Game. It's in Indianapolis. What does that mean for pro basketball in Indiana, and what we're looking forward to the most? So a lot of stuff going on with the NBA and pro basketball in Indiana. It's a great time to be a Pacers fan right now.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of big news. The Pacers are constantly there, being talked about on a national scale, not just because of the trade for Pascal Siakam, but also with the upcoming All-Star Game, the emergence of Tyrese Halliburton, the amazing run that they had to the in-season tournament championship game. Just a lot of things going on. I mean, yeah, they're kind of going through a little bit of a skid right now with injuries, but the All-Star break's right around the corner, so that should help. But it's, I've actually found myself, unfortunately, not able to tune into the games, but that's a totally different conversation for a totally different day about Bali Sports and how they've dropped the ball big time there. But, I'm at least following the games on the Gamecast on Bleacher Report or whatever it might be. I'm finding myself more invested and interested in what the Pacers are doing now than I have in the past several years. I mean, look, even on this show, we haven't talked too much about the Pacers because there hasn't been too much to talk about with them up until now. That things are improving, and they're a fun team to watch right now.
Yeah, we would typically do like a preview show and like for the season, and then really, since they haven't really been in the playoff mix, there hasn't really been a lot to talk about. And because and really it's been because of just kind of the state of the NBA in general. I mean, we've talked about now. I think that's kind of changing, and we'll get into that a little bit later. About because when we first started the podcast, it was still about creating super teams and doing all that kind of thing, and small market teams. It's like, so what's the point? We can keep going into rebuilds and out of rebuilds and building up all we want, but if we're going to always be the 4 or 5 seed and get knocked out by a team that has 5 all-stars, like, what's the point? So but now things are starting to kind of even out a little bit. Now the Pacers have a great core of players. You mentioned the in-season tournament. I thought it was very fitting that, of course, LeBron is in our in the Pacers way yet again. Yeah, I was like, I even tweeted out, I was like, why is LeBron James always ruining my basketball dreams? Why is he always standing in the way of the things that I want to enjoy in the basketball world? But that was a fantastic
that's
run.
always been a Pacers thing. It had if it wasn't LeBron James, it was Patrick Ewing and the Knicks, or Michael Jordan and the Bulls, or that one magnificent season when the Pacers made a run to the NBA Finals, Kobe and Shaq with the Lakers. So that's just kind of the theme as a Pacers fan. You just know there's always some big superstar or superstar tandem that is going to be standing in the way.
Even though it's not really a superstar tandem, but even there was those couple of years in the early 2000s with the Pistons, when the Pistons were really good. The Pistons stood in their way a couple of years.
If you look back, I mean, Richard Hamilton and Chauncey Billups, I mean, that team was
Ben Wallace.
Both of them, the Wallaces. Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, Pacers also shot themselves in the foot in that series, and the 1 year that they actually had a legitimate shot of winning an NBA championship. we all know what happened up in Detroit with the malice in the palace. So
Oh yeah.
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 But on to brighter days for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, for sure. And they've already made it, like I said, the trade deadline is is on Thursday. We're recording this podcast on Tuesday night, so still some time to see what the Pacers have in the store, but they've already made a big splash already in the way of making an acquisition here early on in 2024. In the middle of January, the Pacers traded Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, and two 2024 first-round picks and a 2026 conditional first-rounder to the Raptors to acquire power forward Pascal Siakam. The Pelicans, who were also involved in the deal, sent the Pacers a future second-round selection as well. And when I look at the trade, if I were to try to give it a grade and evaluate it here, especially now a couple of weeks removed, I'm gonna grade it. I first and foremost, I saw. I read a couple of articles on it. They both, the couple of articles that I read gave the trade a B. And I think that that's a good place to have it. The Pacers were in need of size and another scorer, and they got that in Siakam. I know one of the articles I saw was like, they need a second scorer to complement Halliburton, and they literally got a guy who is going to be like that complimentary second scorer. Upon being acquired, Siakam became the second leading scorer, averaging 21 points per game, second only to Halliburton, who averages 23 points per game. In the 10 games, this was in my research prior to the Charlotte game. So in the 10 games going into that Charlotte game on Sunday, Siakam I did account for the Charlotte game, so this is not including obviously the Rockets game that's going on right now. In the 10 games since being acquired, Siakam has been either the leading or second leading scorer 9 times. He tied for the second leading scorer in his debut against the Blazers. He scored 21 points. He again tied for the second leading scorer against the Suns in the following game. He scored 15 points. He led the team in assists as well. A week after being acquired, the Pacers finally got their first win with Siakam on the roster, with him dropping a triple-double in the process against the 76ers. He had 26 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists in that one. In the following game, Pascal was the leading scorer against the Suns with 31 points. He was tied for the second leading scorer against the Grizzlies in a win, 19 points. And then last week, he was the second leading scorer against the Celtics. Last Tuesday, he scored 23. Second leading scorer against the Knicks on Thursday. On Friday, Siakam was the second leading scorer with 22 points. And then he was the leading scorer Sunday against Charlotte with 25 points. He also had 9 assists. So he has literally made a huge impact right off the bat. Unfortunately, though, I mentioned them finally getting their first win with Siakam. Unfortunately, the Pacers are 4-6 over the last 10 games with their new power forward. So they haven't, the win column has not really, been filled up since Siakam has got there. But 7 of those 10 games have been against playoff teams, so it's not as if they're, losing against, bad teams. I mean, some of them have.
They're not healthy. And right. Halliburton's been out or on a minutes restriction.
Right. So the results as far as the win column haven't been there, but there's no question that Siakam has made an impact. He's made his impact felt already. Now, so like I said, I saw a lot of articles grade the trade as a B. I'm going to give it an A-. And the reason why I bump it up to an A- is because we finally see Indiana make a win now aggressive decision. Something that we begged them to do. We talked about our early podcasts on the Pacers. We begged for them to do that. It's not as if we wanted them to do something stupid or get, locked up in a bad contract. We were just like, come on, just please, we want to be competitive. Let's just try to do something to try to break through. And the Pacers would just never do that. But not only did they add a player with playoff experience that was good, and make a win now move, they also, add a player with NBA finals experience. And now I know Bruce Brown also had that, but he was not necessarily as impactful as Siakam. Siakam's a 2-time NBA All-Star, 2-time All-NBA selection. He's far better in that category. As far as, having the experience and also having the production. So, now I did see CBSSports.com, one of those articles I read, also said that the reason why they rated it a B was because the Pacers could have gotten Siakam outright in free agency if they wanted to, but now he's already in the building. You have kind of first opportunity to talk to him, try to extend him. And as someone who's not really plugged into the draft, going ahead and trading picks for a proven talent and having the first opportunity to lock him up is a great move. So I love the move. I've also heard that the upcoming draft classes aren't really great anyway. So I mean, to go ahead and get a proven talent, to go ahead and get someone in the building that you could potentially have tried to sign in the offseason, I think that's a fantastic move. This trade gets an A- for me. It's a good move for the Pacers, and I'm glad they finally kind of made that win now kind of impactful trade.
Yeah, I mean, I am all on board for this trade. I loved it. I give it a B plus though, just because of what the Pacers had to give up, giving up two solid bench players, especially a great locker room presence in Bruce Brown, plus three first round picks. That's a tougher pill to swallow, those picks, because the Pacers still have the ability to make moves, but now they're just a little bit more restricted in the kind of moves that they can make, because you keep one of those first rounders for this year. You can package something like that with like a Buddy Hield potentially and go out and make another big win now move. However, when you do look at it on the flip side, if you go out and make a move similar to that, you might put yourself in a situation where you're not able to re-sign Siakam in the offseason. So there is that scale you got to weigh it on. So that's why I give it a B plus, like just below the A- cutoff. I guess it's an 89% that I give it, because it's a great sign that the Pacers are that the front office is willing to do what they need to do to build a team around Tyrese Halliburton. And that's something that they didn't fully commit to and show to Paul George, if you want to believe the rumors, to an extent. But I feel like now they have the coach in place that is super competitive, and knows how to get a lot out of his teams. You have the young all-star that you have locked in. Look, Pacers have always been tight with the purse strings, and they shelled out a max contract for a player. And it's just like, whoa, okay. So they're serious now. So this is a good sign for the fan base. I, the fact that you filled a need on your roster, you upgraded it, is always a plus. It is, like I said, it does hurt a little bit that you had to give up both first rounders this year. And then you also brought in a piece where you have quite a bit of depth already, where you already actually made a move in the offseason to acquire a piece at that same position, Obi Toppin. Now, I mean, yes, Siakam is an upgrade over Obi Toppin. Not questioning that one bit, but now it puts you in a situation where, do you move Toppin now? Now you have a log jam at power forward. Are you hindering the growth of your lottery pick from this past year and Jarris Walker? There's just a lot of things that you got to look at, which brings you into any potential other moves moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, think of the last time the Pacers made a trade that was like an impactful win now this year type move. Because I'm trying to think of the trades that they've done. I was like when they brought in, I was like when they brought in Oladipo. I mean, because when I think win now, I mean it's not just it's a hey, this move could only apply to this year. It's not a year from now thing, because obviously they traded to get Halliburton. That's a big time move, but that was obviously
No, I mean, I think they realized, I mean, Halliburton wasn't an all-star yet. He was this kind
Right,
of
but that's what I'm saying is that like they
hidden
didn't.
away commodity.
All their trades have been to like kind of build up and get assets. They haven't really made a win now trade, is what I'm
And
saying.
they've kind of gotten lucky on that end that they ended
Right,
up bringing some pieces that end up booming in
right.
Indiana. I'm trying to remember. I mean, these were long time ago moves. Um, I could have. I thought they may. I may be wrong. My years are all mixed up because this was a long time ago. Felt like they made moves early on that brought in like Jalen Rose and Brad Miller. That
Yeah.
those were some big moves at that time. They didn't pay off that year, but they paid off down the line. Um,
But I
correct me
mean,
if I'm wrong. David West, was he a trade or was he a free agent acquisition? I believe he was a free agent
yeah.
acquisition.
But I mean, you'd have to go like that's the point. You'd have to go back like decades to like look at a move that they've made that was like, hey, this is like not a trade, not necessarily a free agent acquisition, but like a trade where they're like, okay, win now. This is a win now move that we're doing. So yeah, no, I'm on board. And as far as the draft picks, like yeah, that stinks. But at the same time, like we've talked about, the draft at least on my as far as I'm concerned, it's so unpredictable as what's going to work and
Oh
what's
yeah.
not going to work. So
And if
I'd
you're
rather,
not picking in the top 15, it's just like
yeah,
you're picking somebody that's probably going to travel back and forth between your roster and your G League roster.
right. Well,
Most likely. I'm not saying it's a
right.
guarantee.
Sometimes you
It's
find
most
that,
likely.
yeah.
Or you're
Um,
going to draft a international player that you're going to stash away overseas and forget that you have the rights to.
mhm. Now you mentioned future moves. There are, there have been rumors that the Pacers aren't done. And I would like I would like to see the Pacers continue to make moves. Because there definitely are some improvements still to be made. One thing that I would like to see the Pacers do still at the deadline is I want to see them add a defender to the mix, get better on defense. The Pacers have the second worst defensive rating in the NBA according to StatMuse. They've struggled on defense all season. According to 8 points 9 seconds, they've thrown out a few names over the past month or so. They've thrown out names like I've seen the Pacers linked to Isaac Okoro from the Cavs, Alex Caruso from the Bulls, Andrew Wiggins from the Warriors was the latest name I saw thrown out there. Wiggins averages more points per game and is far better when it comes to defensive rating. His is 120.5. Caruso and Okoro are in the 108s. Caruso is the best 3-point shooter of the three. So I think either Caruso or Wiggins would be the better of those three players in that situation. And according to at the Indy Pacer on Twitter, the Warriors will be looking for a player-for-player swap for Wiggins. So he also could cost the least. You mentioned having to, not having a lot left after the Siakam trade. If you were able to trade Hield for Wiggins straight up, that would almost be an ideal situation there. You wouldn't have to give up any more draft capital. So Wiggins, I think, might be the best choice on all fronts. But at the bare minimum, I would just like to see the Pacers improve defensively and get better on that front because that is the one area that they have really struggled in probably the most. They have the best offense in the NBA. They just can't defend really well at all this year.
Yeah, I would really like the Pacers to make another move. Obviously, like I said, Buddy Hield and Obi Toppin are um, the top trade. They openly allowed those guys to go out and seek a trade. Now that was a couple weeks ago, and here we are, the week of the trade deadline, and nothing has happened yet. Just looking back over an article I read today on the Indy Star, kind of breaking things down. Andrew Wiggins was another name that was mentioned. He would kind of fit the bill of what the Pacers are needing to do. He's got some good. He's a good scoring option, a solid defender. Um, there was, I know, Chicago's Alex Caruso is kind of being. He's officially kind of been taken off the
I was
market
gonna
by
say, I know
Chicago.
they said he was gonna command a steep price, so
Yeah. I was just trying to read. There was one, it looked like, I don't know why I thought the 76ers were mentioned. Oh, the Nets are a team that is another potential that has a couple pieces that would fit what the Pacers are looking for and what the pieces the Pacers have. Brooklyn, really the biggest piece there that you could try to go after is Mikal Bridges, who's a former all defensive team pick, who actually played with Halliburton on Team USA this past summer. So that's a positive because Halliburton was in full recruiting mode. I mean, then there's other players that the Nets have who might fit, like Royce O'Neal. He doesn't score much, but he's a multi-positional defender. So that's big. Or Dorian Finney-Smith is another name with the Nets. So I mean, there's a lot of options. I know some people are like, oh, they should try to go in and get Deontay Murray from the Atlanta Hawks. That's not going to happen, especially with no first round picks this year. He's going to require a lot, but fans can dream. That would be one unbelievable starting lineup. But unfortunately, I feel like if you did that, you're going to have to give up you're going to have to probably give up Benedict Mathurin and essentially you're be trading for, I feel like, an older Benedict Mathurin, and you'd be hindering his development as well. So it's really going to be tough for the Pacers because they have to weigh those options of like, look, we know who we want to be our core group going forward. And we want to get the most out of our rookies. We have high hopes in our rookies or our second year players. It's just, the Pacers are kind of in a win now mode. They need to, especially if you're not able to re-sign Siakam. This is a huge opportunity this year, especially now with the Joel Embiid injury. That really kind of changes the landscape of the East a little bit. I mean, you still have, we'll get into the landscape of the East more, but it does help. Unfortunately, that the Sixers are kind of spiraling right now. So they may be even looking to make moves. I know I was scrolling through Twitter earlier this evening and saw that the 76ers are interested in one of the players they're interested in is Buddy Hield. So there could be a potential move there. But it'll be interesting. In the past, you're just like, okay, trade deadline, Pacers are doing nothing. But now you're kind of like, I feel like they're going to do something else. There's just something there. I mean, it's not that Miles Turner is going to be traded at the deadline nonsense that we've heard for so many years. What's funny is that we finally stopped talking about that and the Pacers start making moves. So I wouldn't be upset if they didn't make a move or if they did make a move. I really don't have a feeling either way. It's not going to change my outlook for the team this year. If they make the right move, I think it could really potentially, especially with a healthy Halliburton, push them up into that next echelon of where they believe they can be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and plus with Siakam being a potential, like it's not the Siakam trade is not just a full on rental. Like we talk a lot about win now, but he could potentially pay off and be, you could potentially re-sign him. So that's why I'm.
And honestly, I don't think the Pacers would have made that trade had they not had discussions with Siakam's management team about the potential of him re-signing here. I don't know. The Pacers, they're kind of, I don't know. I just feel like that trade was not gonna. Pacers weren't going to pull the trigger on that unless they had a little bit of a guarantee that he would at least consider or strongly consider. I don't know, but yeah, I like the Pacers' chances of re-signing him. Just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the landscape of the East, and I thought it would be fun for us to do a segment of Hot or Cold that was our NBA playoff edition, which we're going to rate the teams currently in the Eastern Conference playoff picture by whether you think the Pacers could win a playoff series against that team on a scale of hot or cold. So we'll name a team in the playoff picture, and we'll say whether or not we think it's going to be hot or cold. whether or not the Pacers can beat them in a playoff series. So you'll kind of get the idea as we go along. If you're unfamiliar with the Crash Course podcast, hot or cold, we say a take and tell you whether or not it's a hot take or a cold take. So the playoff teams as of right now in the East, you've got the Celtics as the 1, you've got the Bucks as the 2, the Cavs are the 3, the Knicks are the 4, the Sixers are the 5, the Pacers are the 6, the Magic are the 7, the Heat are the 8, the Bulls are the 9, and the Hawks are the 10. So that's how everything sits right now in the NBA on the Eastern Conference side. So starting with the Celtics. On a scale of hot to cold, I'm going to say the Pacers, their chances of beating the Celtics in a playoff series is mid-January. If you all remember, the third week of January, we saw the coldest temps of the year so far. January 15th was the coldest day where I am. The high was 6, the low was -5 in East Central Indiana. The Pacers were 2-3 against the Celtics this season. Boston is 3rd in defensive rating, 6th in points allowed per game. This will be the 10th season in a row the Celtics have made the playoffs, and if things stay the same, the 3rd straight year they'll be a top 2 seed. In the 9 seasons prior, they've won at least 1 playoff series in 6 of those seasons. Made the conference finals in 5 of those seasons. So they've had a lot of playoff success. I know that a lot of it isn't with the team that they had now, but I mean even the team they have now has had a lot of playoff success. They were in the finals a couple of years ago, so they've had a lot of playoff success. They're a fantastic team again this year. In a 7-game series, I think the Pacers can hang. I don't think it's going to be a sweep, but I think the Pacers would really struggle to make it a 7-game series even. So, even if Boston didn't have the defense to shut down the Pacers legally in the offense, their playoff success and experience would be enough to get the nod from me. So I think the Celtics would win that series. I don't think I have really any faith that the Pacers could win that.
Yeah, the Celtics are, in my opinion, the best team in the NBA right now. So I give this a frigid cold chance of the Pacers winning. Now, I think they're not getting swept in a series against the Celtics by any means. I mean, look, they're 2-3 against them this year. They've held their own. I mean, they had to beat the Celtics to even make it to Las Vegas to compete in the in-season tournament Final Four. So there's that, but the Celtics are just really, really good. And if the Pacers don't figure out some form of defense, that definitely goes the Celtics' way, that series, no matter what.
So I lied. Actually, the Cavs now are the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. When I made the outline, the Bucks were 2. They're tied. They're both 5 games back of the Celtics. So that's flip-flopped a little bit. That doesn't really change my outlook. I'll go ahead and do the Cavs now. The Cavs for me, as far as the chances I give the Pacers to beat the Cavs in a playoff series are the other side of the pillow. In other words, cool. The Pacers have won both meetings against Cleveland so far this season, but that was all the way back at the beginning of the year in October and November. So here in early February, there's not a whole lot of stock I put in that one. The Cavs are 2nd in the league in defensive efficiency and are 3rd in points allowed per game. But the Cavs just made the playoffs last season for the first time since 2018, which is also the last time they won a playoff series. So I think that the Cavs, obviously, as a 2 seed, are good enough to beat the Pacers in a playoff series and can beat the Pacers in a playoff series. They definitely have the defense to shut down the Pacers' offense, but at the same time, they don't have the playoff experience that scares me away from thinking that they might kind of falter in that big moment. So I would say that the Pacers have a fighting chance to win that one.
All right, so it's for me, it's like that warm, that when you're laying in bed and you're not too hot, not too cold, but to get the right body temperature, you stick that foot out from underneath the blanket. That's kind of where I am on a series with the Cavs. It really is kind of a toss up because neither team has the playoff experience fully. Now the Pacers do have some pieces that have been in the playoffs before, but not as this team. I think the in-season tournament experience is what it officially puts the Pacers over the edge in a series against the Cavs. But yeah, I really like the Pacers in a playoff series against them.
As far as the Bucks go, the Bucks are the 3 seed now. For them, the chances I give the Pacers to beat the Bucks in a playoff series, I'm gonna rate that on a scale of hot to cold. I'm going to say that's fake spring. We're kind of going to get that this week if you're in Indiana. I promise these won't be all weather related, but we all know the feeling, right? You know, it's been 20s, and it's been in the 20s and 30s for weeks. The temperatures start to rise into the 40s and 50s, and it feels absolutely amazing. You think it's like it basically feels like summer. The Bucks are the number 3 seed. We all know how dangerous they are and what they're capable of in the postseason. But the Pacers went 4-1 against them this season.
Really, 4-1?
Yeah, they went. I thought they swept them too, but they. I looked and they went 4-1. I could double check it, but I thought I saw a loss in there when I was.
I thought they went 4-0 against them, and then they also beat them in the in-season tournament.
Yeah,
semifinals.
So from what I saw, they went 4-1. So I'll double check it, but yeah. So regardless, they've beaten them a bunch this year, and these are the 2 best offenses in the league. They're also not great defensively, so it's not as if the Bucks are really good defensively and the Pacers are really bad defensively, and they're both really good offensively. No, like they're both kind of similar as far as their statistics go in that realm. We all know that in fake spring, those 20-degree days will make a comeback. Just like I know picking a Pacers franchise that hasn't won a playoff series in a decade to knock off a team that is just a couple years removed from raising a banner is pretty bold. But I believe it could happen. So I think the Pacers could beat the Bucks in a playoff series if they were to match up at some point in the postseason. Right now, they are set to match up. If the playoffs were today, that would be the series. The Pacers would advance because that's the 3-6. So that would be my prediction.
So I'm gonna go with this is like that Indy 500 heat.
Ooh, that's even bigger than me on that one.
Well, it depends. We're not talking about the year Willpower won. Where it was the hottest on record for the Indy 500.
That's what
we're not going as cold as the year that it was when Tony Kanaan won. We'll go with, last year was beautiful. We'll go with last year. So, it's that comfortable, but it's nice, it's warm, you're just happy to be outside. I'm going with that because I feel like the Pacers match up extremely well with the Bucks. They kind of have their number this year. It's not a sure thing year over year, but this year the Pacers seem to have the Bucks number. A lot of people will say that is why the Bucks fired their coach because they have played so terribly against the Pacers, but that's just Pacers fans wanting to say that, but whatever. I really do like the Pacers' chances. I would feel the most confident. I would feel really confident if we got matched up against the Bucks in the playoffs along the way. I think the Pacers would be able to take that one.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that would be a really fun series. I think the Pacers would shock some people in that regard, because you would like to think like, oh, Dame and Giannis, like of course that's going to be a win for the Bucks, but I think the Pacers have shown they can hang. As far as the Knicks go, the Knicks are the 4th seed. As far as on a scale of hot to cold, could the Pacers beat the Knicks in a playoff series? I'm going to go with the freezer. Not the coldest, but maybe the 2nd or 3rd coldest. I know, wild that I give Indiana more of a chance to beat the Bucks than I do the Knicks in a playoff series. But hear me out. The Knicks are 7th in defensive rating. They're 2nd in points allowed per game, and have split their games with the Pacers this season. The win coming post Siakam trade, so they've beaten the current iteration of the Pacers. New York won their first playoff series in a decade last season, and while I think a matchup with the Pacers would be fun, there's just too much evidence for me, in my opinion, saying that the Knicks would win that series. So I'm just on the cold side. That's where I'm at. It's freezer can be you could be I don't know what's safe for a freezer, like 18, like 17, like I don't know.
You're
Anyway,
asking the wrong
yeah,
person.
I was like I don't know how cold a freezer can is like what it's safe to
I like
be.
my freeze. My no, I don't know.
'Cause, I mean it's below freezing. That's
I
all I
can tell you,
mean.
I like my
That's all I mean is
refrigerator. I'm bad. I like my refrigerator, but my beverage refrigerator around 32,
yeah. Wait,
about 30, probably about 34. Give me that nice, really nice cold beer.
yeah, so maybe refrigerator might be more apt because I mean, I what I mean is like closer to like freezing than I mean like actually like sub zero. That's what I.
Okay,
So I guess that's where I'm at.
got it. Yeah, I like that. I like the refrigerator. With this one, the beverage refrigerator, not the everyday food refrigerator, the beverage refrigerator, the garage fridge,
There you
as
go.
I have. That this team is good defensively. The moves that they've made have only made them better defensively. Um, yeah, I don't like how the Knicks match up against the Pacers at all. Like that's a tough one. It is a tough one. I mean, I think when you break it down by position, there's some positions the Pacers have got them in, but not many. The only thing I feel like that could help the Pacers in this series is the fact that their bench is so deep. They go 13 players deep on their entire on their roster. 13 of the 14 see a lot of playing time. Um, that's why I gave it the garage fridge beverage refrigerator because of the bench. There's a chance, but otherwise the matchup just it it's not one I like.
Now moving on to the 76ers. That's the last team ahead of the Pacers in the standings. On a scale of hot to cold, how much of a chance do I think the Pacers would have against the 76ers in a playoff series? I'm going warm. I won't go full hot scale. I won't go full on into the hot scale on this one. But Indiana is 2-1 against Philly, and that's now a team that is without Embiid for an indefinite amount of time. I think I saw today 4 weeks, and maybe longer. 4 weeks, I think, until I don't know what the exact thing was.
If you listen to what Charles Barkley said about the injury, it's gonna be a long
Yeah,
while.
it might have been like 4 weeks until he can like resume basketball activities or something like that. I remember, I just
Yeah,
remember seeing 4 weeks. Was the timetable. Out at least 4 weeks after left knee procedure. So he's out at least 4 weeks, and I mean I kind of saw like it could be a long time that he's out.
yeah,
So yeah, so without and also not to mention Philly's playoff struggles. So even if you have a healthy Embiid, if you were to match up with Philly, especially in the second round, that's almost an automatic pass to the Eastern Conference Finals the way they've shown up in those semifinals. I'm going with the Pacers in that scenario.
yeah. I'm going. This is 4th of July. Um, you're not you're hot, but you're not quite into the dog days of summer, late July, early August, where you're just like, I don't even want to be outside. Um, this is 4th of July because if Joel Embiid is back and healthy, he's one of the best players in the entire NBA. We all know that. Um, but the Pacers match up really well against this team because if Embiid's not even if he's not at 100%, or even if he's just close to 100%, I feel like the Pacers can outrun this team. Um, the Pacers are a fast moving, high scoring team that I feel like the 76ers would just have a tough time keeping up with. And the size of a guard like Tyrese Halliburton, whether he's shooting the three or slashing to the basket, it is going to give the 76ers team fits. So that's why I go 4th of July Heat. I do believe the Pacers would win a playoff series against the 76ers.
So now the rest of the teams we're going to list are now play-in teams. They're beneath the Pacers in the standings. Starting with the Magic, on a scale of hot to cold, how much of a chance do I give the Pacers to beat the Magic in a playoff series? I'm going to go lukewarm here. Currently, Orlando is a play-in team, but they have played Indiana twice and have beaten them twice this season. While the Magic are in the top five in defensive rating and points allowed per game, they're also 25th in points per game. So ultimately, I think the Pacers could win a series against them, but it's close just because of the fact that I think their defense can bring the offense kind of further to their level. I think that they can play well enough defensively to take away the advantage that the Pacers would have on offense.
So for me, this is that glass of water that's been sitting out on your bedside table all night after a night of out partying and drinking. You go to grab it that next morning and it's just not great. It's not cold, it's not hot, it's just that stale. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about?
Stale water, yeah.
Stale water. Yeah, but that temperature of stale water. That's what it is. Just because this Magic team is a sneaky good team this year. I feel like this is a team that you may potentially overlook, and then they hit you in the mouth, and next thing you know, you've lost a playoff series to them, and you're just like, what happened? But at the same time, that Magic team is very young still and could trip over themselves because they got too good too quick and didn't really, the process didn't follow, I don't know, the right track. But I think the Pacers could ultimately win this series, but it's going to be that one that's like, oh, that was way too close for comfort. That was almost a first round exit.
Yeah.
Or a potential loss in the play-in.
Yeah, that would not be good.
I would not. I don't think I would want to play them in a one-game series at
No,
all.
no.
That would not be good.
The Miami Heat. On a scale of hot to cold, do I think the Pacers could beat the Miami Heat in a series? Where I go with that one is I say the middle of a hot pocket. Like it should be warm. But it could just as likely be cold. Miami and Indiana have split their games this season. The Heat are 7th in points allowed per game, but they're in the bottom 5 in points per game. But they're fresh off a finals run a year ago, and I feel like that team, you just never know once it becomes playoff time. Like once the playoffs start, we talked a lot about the Chiefs. Obviously they're not the Chiefs of the NBA. Let's get that out of the way first and foremost. But like they're a team. They're the St. Louis Cardinals of the of the NBA, where once the playoffs start, just throw the records out the window because they're just gonna find a way to beat you and get into the and next thing you know, you're like the Heat are in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Weren't they like the 8th seed at one point? You're like, yeah, I don't know. They found a way. They did it. So yeah, I think the Pacers should be able to beat the Heat. But the Heat are just another animal when it comes to the postseason.
Yeah, gosh, this one's a tough one because of, just like you said, this is a team that I don't know. Right now, I'm actually going to say,
because they were the A seed last year in the East, weren't they? Or weren't they like a real low seed in the East? Maybe not as low as the 8th seed, but
be honest,
they were.
I did not pay attention to. Okay, I will say last year I was during the NBA playoffs.
That's
I am
true.
full at that time. I was
College
full
baseball mode. Yeah,
all in on college
yeah.
baseball, and nothing else mattered. I put my head down and I woke up and it was July. So this one I'm gonna go Saturday morning pizza. Um, Not out of the refrigerator, but that was left out on the kitchen counter all night. Um, if college days, waking up on a Saturday morning, that box of pizza is sitting on a countertop in your dorm room, and you're like, yeah, that's good. That's the stuff right there. That's where I'm going with the Heat, because the Heat are struggling right now. Struggling. Like potentially out of the playoffs, struggling if they keep this up. So right now, I like the Pacers' chances. But again, this is the Miami Heat. And what they do in the playoffs is totally different from what they do in the regular season. And there's just no explanation for it. So you kind of, it's a toss up. But as of today, I would give the Pacers the advantage in a playoff series against the Heat.
Final two teams here. The Bulls. They're the ninth seed. I'm rating this on a scale of hot to cold. Fresh out of the oven. Other teams the Pacers have, they're the other team the Pacers have split. They're another team that the Pacers have split games against this season. They also have a bottom five offense in the NBA. Their defense doesn't scare me enough to make me think that the Pacers couldn't win against the 9 seed. So their defense, I think, is close to the top 10 in points allowed per game. But again, that's not enough with how bad their offense is to make me think that the Pacers would struggle in a series against them. So Pacers, I think, would win that series.
Yeah. This one I'm just gonna go with it's warm. Close to hot. For me, it's the Pacers can win this one. The Bulls are just kind of right there on that cusp of, do they make trades to look at their future, or are they willing to ride with what they got? It's just one of those teams. It's kind of, if you want to know, it's kind of where the Pacers were not that long ago, where it was like, who are we? What is our identity? That's where the Bulls are. So because the Pacers have an identity right now, and I think have the firepower to outscore the Bulls, I don't think the Bulls have enough firepower to keep up with the Pacers. So I give the Pacers this series.
And finally, the Atlanta Hawks. On a scale of hot or cold, how much of a chance do I give the Pacers to beat the Hawks in a playoff series? I mean, look, you've got to have confidence that the Pacers can beat the literal last team in the playoffs right now. A team that's on the fringe of being out of the playoffs. Pacers are 3-0 against Atlanta this season. I'm going fire here. That's how hot I'm giving it. That's flaming hot Cheetos, whatever you want to call it. I am going that's a team that I am very confident I would push all my chips in. Pacers win that series against the Hawks.
Yeah, this one, it's not quite. This is that dog days of summer, late July, early August type heat that is just smothering, and that's because the Pacers would walk with this series. The Hawks, they're one of those teams that they're a mess. It feels like, and considering that they're looking at potentially being sellers at the deadline, that's all you got to say.
Now, before we wrap things up tonight, I wanted to talk. Of course, the NBA All-Star Game is in Indiana this year, in Indianapolis. It was going to be a few years ago, but because of the pandemic and everything, they moved some things around. So the NBA All-Star Game is going to finally be in Indianapolis. We're less than 2 weeks away. And so, it kind of got me thinking, what does this mean for pro basketball in Indiana? What does it mean to have the All-Star Game here? Because I can't think of the last time it's been in Indiana, if it has been at all. This might be the first time. I literally don't know. It probably hasn't been. It probably has been before, but I just don't remember it.
I feel like it was a long time ago. Like, there's events that have happened in Indianapolis at the old RCA Dome that took me off guard, took me by surprise. Like the fact that the RCA Dome hosted a WWE WrestleMania, I had no idea, and so I wouldn't. It may be a possibility, but wasn't. I mean, I may have not been alive at that time.
But yeah, I was just thinking about what does the NBA All-Star Game being in Indy mean for pro basketball in Indiana? And I think this can be a pivotal moment in Pacers history, or at least recent history. And the reason I say that is because the Pacers are solidly in the playoff hunt. They've got an exciting young core with the best offense in the NBA right now. Tyrese Halliburton joined Paul George, Jermaine O'Neal, and Reggie Miller as Pacers selected to be All-Star starters. They knocked off Boston and Milwaukee en route to a runner-up finish in the inaugural in-season tournament. I bring all this up to show how much momentum is behind Indiana right now, and we all know Indianapolis's track record hosting big events. Everybody always walks away impressed. Heck, I'm impressed. I saw the video of like the LED court that they're gonna have.
Going to be awesome.
And I'm like, I'm amazed.
How many other airports have actually put a full-size basketball court in the middle of it?
Right. So like Indianapolis just does events the right way. They just go all in. They go all out. It's awesome.
Shout out to Indy Sports Corps on that one.
Right. And the articles I read about, I mentioned, the articles I read about the Siakam trade a few times. They discussed how, Indiana is not looked at as a destination for free agents, and how the Siakam trade shows that, and that the Siakam trade shows that the Pacers front office is in win now mode to some degree. We've talked about it before, how one thing that kind of turned us off and what made us kind of not cover the NBA as much on this podcast is because like the small market team there wasn't a place for it, in the NBA a couple years ago, because if you weren't, in LA, if you weren't in New York, if you weren't in a big market, like you weren't going to attract any free agents, you weren't going to do anything because everybody was concerned with going to a destination, teaming up with 3 or 4 other superstars, and that was what was going to win an NBA championship. Now, granted, I understand like LeBron, was in Cleveland. That's not a big market, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like it was all about creating a super team. If you weren't, obviously LeBron wouldn't have gone there if that wasn't literally, where he's from and the first team he played for. Like that's the only draw. It's not like he was like, I really love Cleveland. Like, no, it's that's where he's from.
In the words of Drew Carey, Cleveland rocks.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you saw it with Milwaukee's title in 2021 and with Denver's title a year ago. We're seeing small market teams break through finally. So this is all to say that with a young core and a weekend to show off how great this city is, who's to say that the Pacers can't start attracting those names? They can't start getting those free agents that could put them into that next tier, into that contending tier, for the Eastern Conference. Like I know that, the Bucks had Giannis, the Bucks have Giannis, the Nuggets had Jokic. I don't know if you want to put, Halliburton necessarily in that conversation yet, but you and I'm not saying that the Pacers are going to go out and get a top 5 player in the NBA. I'm just saying that I think that it would be more of a destination than it's ever been, with an opportunity to show off how really great this city is, how well they do events, and how much this city can embrace you when this team is, especially when this team is amazing. So I think this has a real shot to kind of finally, with everything kind of coming together with, a great team, a great weekend, it can finally be like, hey, you know what? Indiana might finally kind of, like remind everyone how, about like where it is on the map and how, how this city can be with a contending team.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for the Pacers. Look, right now, like you said, the Pacers have shown that they are willing to do what it takes to compete. We are starting to see a shift, I believe, in the NBA from the old group of all-star players to the new up-and-coming, exciting next group of young all-star players. And I believe that Tyrese Halliburton is leading the way for that group. And point being is the fact that he won the fan voting. Like, he ran away with that. It's in the past when you get Pacers all-stars around other big names, they seem to be unhappy. Paul George, unhappy. Victor Oladipo, unhappy. So they started looking at talking to other guys about where can I go to come play with you? Whereas now the narrative has changed. You actually have somebody that wants to be in Indiana, that wants to have his career be here, that wants to build this team. And with Tyrese Halliburton, who openly was recruiting guys and telling them how great it was to be in Indiana during his time with Team USA this past summer. That we haven't had that kind of narrative with an all-star player. I want to say probably since Reggie. If I don't know. Social media wasn't around then, so you don't really know what people were talking about frequently because they weren't posting it. They had nowhere to post it. But here's another opportunity for Halliburton, who is a starter on the East. I mean, he's going to be around all the guys in the West too. All of the eyes of the NBA are on Indianapolis. Look, you can even, when guys end up being traded here or something, they always say this is a totally different fan base because they actually get basketball. They appreciate good basketball. And it's going to be a huge opportunity for at least Tyrese Halliburton to actually show off what being in Indianapolis could mean and could look like for any potential higher level free agents. And not only is it big for the Pacers in a basketball standpoint, I think it's also big for the city of Indianapolis and a sports world in general, because for some reason the Indianapolis put on a great Super Bowl and has been kind of overlooked since then. I mean, they have put in bids. They put in bids. They just haven't been successful. I think now having another major professional sporting event will bring Indianapolis back into the conversation for events such as the Super Bowl or whatever it might be. So not only is it big for the Pacers, but it's big for the city. I think this is the opportunity, though, for the Pacers to build their future and potentially be that next contender, that next, I guess I'm trying to think of the right phrasing for it. They're going to find their foothold and become a solid ground contender, not just a 1 year, 2 year fluke. They're going to potentially put together some runs, whether they win a championship or not, but put together playoff runs that turn heads and get people interested in being here. Because look, the Pacers also have a coach right now. That player, I mean, I can't say for certain that all the players like him, but he is a likable coach. He's a proven winner wherever he goes. And it just feels like pieces are falling into place for maybe not this year, but next year after that, for something special to happen for the Pacers, especially as this older guard of like the old guard, I guess, of all-stars starts phasing out or aging even more. And then that next rising group comes to the forefront, and I believe is being led by Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna really kind of turn the tide a little bit, and I think it's gonna be big. I think this is gonna be this weekend's gonna be a big moment for Indiana. I think that they're gonna shine like they always have. And speaking of All-Star Weekend in Indiana, one last thing before we go, what's an event that you're looking forward to the most? All-Star Weekend. For me, it's the 3-point challenge between Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionesco. It's the NBA all-time 3-point leader versus the WNBA single-season 3-point record holder. I was wondering when this was announced if it was instead of the usual 3-point contest, but it's a new event on its own. And anytime you can add something fresh to an All-Star Weekend event, it's always a good thing. And then when you have, there's going to be players like Caitlin Clark soon to enter the fold in the coming years in the WNBA, so this opens the door for future events like that to take place. So I think it's a great event. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that, and I think that's going to be the exciting point of All-Star Weekend, because the 3-point shooting contest, I think, is one of my favorites. I like the skills challenge too. The dunk contest is kind of played out. There's not really a whole lot, that you can really, there's not much that can kind of wow you anymore, dunk contest wise. So I think this is the event that's going to kind of be the biggest of the weekend.
Thank you, Blake Griffin, for jumping over a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one. I can't wait to see what that one looks like in the future. Honestly, I could see in the future Tyrese Halliburton versus Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Two Iowans.
A Pacer versus a Fever. Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome.
But for me, I am looking at the Rising Stars versus Sophomores game. Entertainment factor, it's okay, but I'm really interested in it because there are actually two Pacers franchise individuals that are taking part in it. One, Benedict Mathurin is playing for that sophomores team. He was playing for he played in this last year as well. But the one that really intrigues me is in the Rising Stars G League players, Pacers or Indiana Mad Ants, forward center, Oscar. I know I'm going to butcher this last name, but I'm going to, Shibwe.
Yeah, Shibwe. That's right. You got it. Good job.
Good for me. Yeah.
I had an inkling of what name you were gonna say, and I was like, I let's see what happens here. I'm gonna see if it happens. We're gonna see what happens.
But I'm interested to watch that. I think for one, Shibwe is one of the players that when the Pacers landed him, I was like, interesting. Like one of those players that was really, really good in college, but you didn't know how his game was going to pan over to the pros. So I'm really intrigued to see how he looks in this game. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one just because of the connections to the Pacers. And again, it's another great thing. These young players from the Pacers being in events in the All-Star Weekend, plus Tyrese Halliburton has joined the fray for the 3-point shooting contest. So that is exciting. And if you're interested in watching that in person, it's looking like the cheapest tickets are roughly around $400 a piece to sit up high in Lucas Oil Stadium. So yeah, just so you are aware.
And one last thing here, the Pacers did win tonight. They beat the Rockets, and the leading scorer was Pascal Siakam. So yet another game where he was the leading scorer, second leading scorer. So he has been an absolute monster since coming to the Pacers. So the Pacers now starting to kind of ride the ship a little bit, because we were talking about off air, they're a team that needs the All-Star break kind of more than anybody right now. So at least they're starting to get some dubs before the All-Star break here. But that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for hanging out. Remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go follow us over on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. Go over to the YouTube channel. If you're listening to us on the podcast app, go over to 3C Media over on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. You guys have been knocking it out with the support on YouTube lately. So go show that love over there. Go follow us on TikTok as well at 3C Media. That is the handle as well. And remember, you can listen to us on the podcast app. If you're watching us on YouTube, go over to the podcast app. On Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever podcasts can be heard, you can hear the Crash Course Podcast. A lot of different ways to bring in the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
Next week, we will be back. We will be talking a little bit of NASCAR action as we get closer to the Daytona 500. A lot of things going on right now as we enter mid-February, and of course, we always love to preview the Great American Race. That'll be a lot of fun, but until then, have a good week, everybody.